Good morning and God bless everyone, especially to my beloved instructor, Sir Unilismar. Allow me to introduce myself by the way. My name is Nathaniel Lubguban Swan, taking of Bachelor of Elementary Education, third year. So for today's morning, I will be discussing about my assigned topic, which is the structuring the literature lesson. Okay, shall we start? The lesson 21, learning targets. At the end of this lesson, you are expected to identify the parts of literature reading lesson plan. Select appreciate activities before, during, and after reading. And create a lesson plan in teaching a literary selection for children. So after this discussion, you can create your own lesson plan involving the literary selection for children. Introduction. Just like the other lesson plans, the lesson plan in teaching literature is presented by teacher to guide him/her in presenting the lesson in an orderly and smooth manner. So ang lesson plan daw, it is represent the the guide of the teacher during this his delivery of the lesson in an orderly and smooth. In such way, learners can engage in activities that are meaningful, foster interest, and ensure attainment of desired learning outcomes. So kinahanglan jud na in order to create a lesson plan in a smooth manner, it is very effective to ensure the attainment of the desired learning outcomes. Kibali makuha nimo ay muhang goal if you are going to make your lesson plan in an orderly and smooth manner. Used as a roadmap to the teacher planning, the lesson will keep the teacher and learners on track, avoiding unpleasant surprises in the classroom. So ang lesson plan in the other hand, isa sa ka roadmap, isa sa ka roadmap sa usa ka teacher nga ang pag-deliver niya sa iyahang lesson is sa ang pag-planning the lesson will keeps the teacher and learners track, avoiding unpleasant surprises in the classroom. For this reason, the language teacher needs to plan the lesson very well to ensure the transition of class activity that would lead to the achievement of learners who are encouraged to engage in reflection, refinement, and improvement of reading skills as they go the planned activities. So just like the other lesson plan formats, the literature lesson plan contains 6 major parts, namely learning outcomes, content subject matter, the learning resources, learning activities procedure, the evaluation, and the last but not the least, the assignment agreement. So each of that I'm going to discuss later. Okay, shall we start in the learning outcomes? So learning outcomes portion is preceded by the statement of content standard, performance standard, learning competency, which are called specific in the curriculum guide for the subject in each grade level. So content standards are broad statements that specify content areas that learners should learn at each grade level. Content standard refers to specific knowledge and skills to which much learners must learn and acquire. It is also called the what must learners should know and be able to apply. Performance standard, on other hand, are the anticipated measure of or evidence that learners have met the content standard. How will they learn the content to qualify how well performance is the specific indicator achievement of the learners after instruction. In this learning competency popularity known as objectives. These are statements communicated by the teacher to the learners on what they should be able to master and to demonstrate at the end of the learning experience. A performance standard refers to the level to which learners must respond of what the content standard has provided, which means it is application of specific and identified skills and knowledge obtained from the content standard. Kibali ang performance standard, the nga portion is the students will react, the students re- um, will react or mo diri na sila mo hatag og performance of what they have learned from the content standard, as what I've said recently. So if we're going to make a lesson plan na involving the literature, the content standard is to use content and prior knowledge. So mugamit ta og mga content standard, though gi provide na ni daan sa DepEd ang content standard. So use of content and prior knowledge and performance standard activate prior knowledge conceptually related to the text, establishing our purpose of reading, of course. So learning competency, so diri na mugawas ang 3 domains. So what are those domains? The cognitive, psychomotor, affective. Diri na siya dapat, if we are going to make a lesson, but it should be smart. So as what is stated here in the learning competency, give details of the story that is related to the pupils' cognitive, their mental aspect. And the second one is the draw the tortoise and monkey showing their emotions. So ipadraw ba nimo sila? Ang psychomotor refers to the performance of the students and how they react or how they perform, and so on. Then identify the parts of the story you like the most and belongs sa affective. Next, content subject matter refers to the topic to be taught. Usually, the objective stated in the base form transformed into a verbal, sequencing the events in the story or sequencing the events in the story. The value to be integrated into the lesson is included in this part of the lesson plan. On the other hand, the learning resources. Learning resources pertains to the references, the materials, and equipment to be used in the execution of the lesson plan. So, ang content o subject matter diri usually gina-indicate ang unsagi topic nimo or unsagi ang imong content. So, we must aware of that in order to para kibali unsa atuhang mga gipang discuss is it should be in line or it should be anchored by your content or the subject matter. And the learning resources refers to the references which learners and teachers can use both, or sa mga reference nimo ang gikuha nimo ang topic or books baka or sa Google form sa Google nga reference. Learning activities procedure. Selection presents the orderly presentation of activities to engage learners in the study of the reading selection, to develop enjoyment in reading and to understand the message of what is read. It is the how portion of the lesson. Lazar 2009 recommended useful activities that could be undertaken during the pre-reading, while reading, and post-reading stages of the reading lesson. These phases have separated features to attain a specific purpose. So, diri ang learning activities or procedures or ang flow sa imuhang topic to engage the development enjoyment in reading, and also in order for the pupils to understand the message of what is read. And during a portion, as what the slide stated here, it is the how of how portion of the lesson. Next, before reading or pre-reading, consider the most important parts of the reading lesson. It provides learners with activities to set the stage for reading, motivate and hook them to the reading task. So we must consider to provide learners with activities that is more interested in order to para nga ma-hook or para makuha in order to catch the pupil's attention in selection, in a reading selection. And next is the stimulating learners' interest in the text, asking learners to describe picture or drawings relevant to the theme of the story or poem, and providing their cultural and historical background, including the author's life, could be create learners' interest in the reading task, as what I've said earlier. So, ask your students to describe pictures based on what they have read. Just like, for example, identifying the animals in these pictures, describe them. So, unsay mga represent nga mga or mga authors, unsa nga mga characters sa usa ka poem, or makakita sila og mga animals in this picture, in the picture. So, allow your students to describe them. Sa kibali sa diha nga pagi is ma-enlighten sila or mas ma-motivate sila nga mobasa, at the same time ilahang gi-describe ang mga animals or ang mga characters sa usa ka story. And that is belong of the before reading or pre-reading. Be developing concept related to the topic or story. Learners are led to identify terms or concepts that they know which are related to those encountered in the selection. To read, for example, the use of words bank concept mapping, listening words associated with the keyword. Just like, for example, what words come to mind when you hear the word kibali, i-develop nimo ang ilahang metacognition skills nga when you hear that word, what comes to your mind, or allow your students to create their own opinion about of what they have read in the selection or in the poem or in the story. Next, that is related to the topic or the story. Activate prior knowledge, asking what learners already known about the topic and term used in the story helps the learners to connect or relate their experience to the story to be read. Mura siya kining schema bitaw. Kibali ang ilahang naibaluan is naa sa ilahang mental or naa silang hunahuna daan. Naka-built in na, but to activate prior knowledge, kibali ang ilahang unang nakatunan, ang ilahang prior knowledge is ma-develop pa or ma-activate pa to help the learners to connect or relate their experience to the story to be read. Kibali kung unsay imong gipabasa sila is ilaha pang isupplement pa, ilahang dungagan ang ilahang nakatunan sa ilahang gibasa nga story. The letter D, unlocking of difficulties. Difficult terms to be encountered in the reading selection are explained through the use of context clues, determining the related words and acting it outcome in order to unlock the difficulties. The difficulties, as what stated here, selection are explained through the use of context clues. So sa pagpasabot sa bata sa mga difficulties sa ilahang na encountered in the reading selection, kibali magkuan gamit ka og context clues para mas masabtan pa nila, para mas malpalawman pa nila pagsabot ang usa ka butang or usa ka butang nga gikalisuran nila. And next, developing a purpose for reading. To help keep learners concentrated and engaged while reading, the teacher asks motive question for them to look for the answer while reading. So in order for them to to make a parang mas naadjud sila nakatunan at para ma-develop pa nila ang purpose for reading, the teacher must ask or should ask a motive question for them to look for the answer while reading para ma-measure nimo if they have if they understand the story. Just like example, if we are going to read a story about a tortoise and monkey, they were friends but became enemies. Though I'm not familiar with this story, but as what the example nga they were friends but became enemies. After reading, answer the question, what happened made them enemies? So, ipapangutanan nimo sa bata kung what is the unsay hinungdan, what is the cause that the tortoise and monkey become enemies. So, kinana ba, para mas ma-develop ang ilang purpose for reading, teacher should ask a motive question for them to look for the answer while reading. While nag-read ang bata, mangutana ka sa ilaha if naaba sila ay mga motive question nga related sa story. During reading or while reading, the teacher model explains, shows, or present to the class what they are expected to learn. Initially, reading aloud should be used according to Anderson, AL 1985. Reading aloud to children is the single most important activity for building the knowledge required for eventual success in reading. So, during reading, teacher models, explains, si teacher ang mag-explain or shows, represent the class if they are, of what should be the expected, of what they are expected to learn. So, ang pagkuan pod, ang pagbasa pod sa usa ka bata, in order them to make a success, in order to catch the success in reading, you must motivate you must encourage your students to read the story in reading aloud. Kanang bitang magbasa sila nga kusgo nila, or namo gyud mga cases nga students can easily comprehend if you are encouraging them to read aloud. Kaya gihibali sa tanang mga estudyante, imong pabasa padunghanon sila nagbasa kusgo nila. Kay naaman po'y usa ka cases nga naa po'y mga instances nga ang bata is dili siya ganahan mo basa kung siya ray isa. So in order them to catch the attention, we as a teacher, we must encourage our students to read it aloud together with their classmates. Next, the whole story is subdivided into chunks. They are read by the teacher or the class one at a time. Through teacher questioning before, to guess what is going to happen, learners are guided to establish connections. So, we must give the opportunity towards our students. Kibali, we must give the ihatag na to ang time sila nga para mas makabalugid sila kung sa ilahang nakatunan sa ilahang gibasa. So ang teacher lang is mag-question siya sa usa ka bata. We must not forget that teacher should not be the first source of knowledge. We must allow your students to be more to be a kanang bitang enlightened person, enlightened nga students, or kanang knowledgeable siya in dealing this kind of situation, or magpabasa ka sa usa ka bata. In teaching poetry, during reading activities involve the first reading of the poem The first reading of the poem by the teacher, then second reading by the class or learner. Then each verse is read one at a time for narrative point, predicting what is coming next is also possible. So then each verse read one at a time for narrative point. Kibali ipatagna nimo sila i-predict. Okay, class, based on the story that you read, wala pa, it's verses pa ba? Now, you ask your student, what should be the first, what should be the next, unsa ka ang next nga mahitabo? Ani nga story? Just like the, pareha ganina akong gi-mention is wala siya kaning sequencing the events. Kibali, i-sequence nimo in kibali i-deliver nimo ang usa ka story or usa ka poem in a sequence, in a manner of sequence, or ipa-predict nimo sa students kung sa what should be the next step, or what should be the next no, not step, what should be the next nga mahitabo sa usa ka story. After reading or post-reading, this part of the lesson engages the learners to share and discuss their ideas about the selection read with the rest of the class. So, of course, kinahanglan na interaction mahitabo sa to ang after reading, or kibari diri na nimo ma-evaluate bitaw. Discuss your learnings about the story that you have read. So, allow your students to discuss based on their knowledge, or based on what they have learned about the story for the rest, with the rest of the class. The sample question is lesson 20 is simplify the discussion questioning to process the reading comprehension of the learners, asking learners to draw the tortoise and monkey depicting the emotion, role-playing, the characters retelling the story using a story frame, and identifying the moral of the story are enrichment activities for the learners to enjoy the literary selection. So, if my teacher na ta puhon, we must not forget to consider this. Ask our learners to draw the tortoise and monkey, or any kind of a story nga ipabasa nimo nila, depicting the emotions, the role-playing, the characters retelling the story using the frame, and identifying moral of the story. That is a very important also. Nga unsay na ilahang mga good nga mga attitude nilang nakuha sa usa ka story. The fifth selection is the evaluation in the form of a quiz or day ways to measure the attainment of the prescribed competency. So, diri nga portion is magpa-quiz na ka based on the story Japon. Dili man ta mag-implement og mga, o di man ta magpabuhat og mga quizzes that are not related to the topic or the story. So, in order to measure the attainment, we must provide quizzes nga para mas ma-determine nato if they are really understand the selection or the story. The goal is to determine the extent of mastery of the reading skills taught for the lesson, as what I've said. The quiz is usually presented in the objective test that can be true or false, yes or no, and multiple choices test type. Inani nga form of quizzes imuhang kuan sa imuhang students. Next, finally, the lesson plan ends with assignment. Of course, the information given to the learners on what to do and how to do, as carried over all up the lesson or in preparation for the next day lesson. It is the follow-up activity for the literature lesson. It could be a performance task. If it is a preview of the next lesson, it could be the reading task, a research activity or information and materials needed in the lesson. Ang purpose sa assignment is unsaon nimo pag-connect or unsaon nimo pag-start ang usa ka ang another story kibali imuhang gaana nimo slag idea ba through a form of assignment. In that way, mas madali lang nato ma-deliver ang atohang next lesson or next story nga atong ipabasa sa ilaha nga ilahang buhaton silang assignment to given to the learners on what to do and how to do. I think that could be all. I hope that you have learned something about my topic. Though dili siya na-attain jud, but I give my very best to execute of what is being discussed or given the topic. That's all. Thank you and God bless.